we talked about democracy, and I started thinking about this book, inspired by the Occupy movement. 80% of the daily newspapers sold in Britain every day are owned by 5 people. And they're all tax dodgers. Absolutely extraordinary. 80%, and these people, those 5 people, also own huge chunks of our television industry as well. So I'll just kind of go through them just for fun, just in case you don't know the names. You'll know obviously Rupert Murdoch, Sun Times. It has something like 150 to 160 companies based in tax havens. Year after year after year, News International paid no tax in the United Kingdom. Richard Desmond, Express newspapers and Channel 5, billionaire, also has huge amounts of companies based in tax havens such as Jersey, etc. Number 4, the Barclay brothers live in the Channel Islands, tax haven. They own the Telegraph. And finally, anybody heard of Johnson Harmsworth? Yeah, Lord Rothermere to the others. And he owns the Daily Mail. He's non-dom. He's not domiciled in the UK. Wonder why? So 4 tax dodgers, 5 tax dodgers own 50%, 80% of our newspapers and huge chunks of our media. And so only 2.6% of our media is not owned by the 1%.
Sorry, did you say 4 or 5?
Well,
Barclay brothers.
The Barclay brothers are 2.
2. Of the who brothers?
The Barclay brothers.
Thanks.
So they're 2. So I kind of it's 5 or 4, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fair point. So of the media, the rest of the media is owned by companies, and actually, for example, Trinity Mirror, Jones and Mirror newspapers. The top 10 shareholders of them are actually banks and international financial institutions. So again, they're part of the 1%. So the only part that's not owned by the 1% is the BBC. But actually, the newspapers, only 2.6% of papers are not owned by the 1%. That is not a democracy. You can't have democratic debate. But the media take a huge amount of their agenda from the newspapers. If you go to any news programme or producer's room in the BBC, they'll have all the newspapers open, and they'll take the stories from those newspapers, and then they'll develop them and broadcast them. So invisibly and not deliberately.
I'm sorry, but when you said 80% of the press, do you mean 80% of the papers each newspaper actually sold, or 80%
of the total number of newspapers sold in Britain every day? 80% of them are owned by these 5 people. Okay. So to a significant extent, the BBC agenda is also driven by the 97% of newspapers are owned by the 1%. Okay. So I think that is really important. Added to that, the thing that I think is really shocking about the newspaper hacking, the phone hacking story, is that, okay, the $1 million stuff, private eyes onto them, and not only did they do that to the MPs that oppose them, but then when the lawyers dared to oppose them, they actually put private eyes onto the lawyers, defending the people who actually they were phone hacking on. What that meant was, for 20 years, we had an entire political system terrified of 2 or 3 people. What effect has that had? It's not just on the families of the phone people whose phones were hacked. It's had a huge effect on our entire political process for 20 years. They hijacked our political system. That is political prostitution. That's the prostitute state. That is not a democracy. That to me is political treason. The Murdochs should be in court for treason because they hijacked and blackmailed our politicians for 20 years. And don't take my word for it, listen to the politicians and they'll tell you how terrified they are. Finally, I want to talk about tax havens. And what I found quite strange, and I hadn't realised, is that I just found that there was a, thank you very much, was that bizarrely, around the fundraising for all 3 political parties were tax haven people. Now, this is kind of funny. Lord Clement Jones, who used to call Lord Cayman Islands, Charles Kennedy threatened me with legal action for saying that was libelous. Lord Clement Jones refused to implement the party decision on being a political lobbyist. He was the spokesperson for the Local Democrats and the Lords on health. He was hired by the European alcohol industry to lobby against health advertising on alcohol bottles. And he said that wasn't corrupt because he stood aside from that part of his portfolio whilst he was lobbying on behalf of the European alcohol industry. So basically what he's saying, it's not corrupt to be hired by the people that you're supposed to be supervising and speaking on behalf of. So he broke not only the party rules in it, He also broke the actual lobbying, the voluntary code of ethics for the lobbying industry himself. Because you're not supposed, they exclude you being a lobbyist and a peer, and he broke that. So who do you think was the treasurer for Nick Clegg at the last general election? Lord Cayman Islands. Absolutely appalling. His predecessor was Lord Razzle, owner of a significant number of companies at the time in Jersey. The big scandal over Michael Brown was arranged by these people. Michael Brown was this tax dodger and thief who gave something like £3-4 million that he'd stolen to Liberal Democrats, another tax dodger. That's my experience with Liberal Democrats, but it's all three parties. Lord Ashcroft, who funded the target seat campaign in every single Tory target seat, funded for 4 years solid, is from connected with Belize and was a non-dom at the time. So the Tories are up to their eyeballs in tax haven money, and finally and Labour is the exact same as well, I'm afraid. If you remember Jeffrey Robinson, offshore trusts. There's also Lord Sainsbury, who's getting his income from offshore trusts, and then there's Bernie Ecclestone, who donated £1 million to the Labour Party. He is currently in a court case in Germany because they couldn't understand why he gave £27 million as a gift to a German banking official. 27 million. Why? Because he wanted to avoid. He's actually scared that he's going to get nobbled for a £1.25 billion tax bill.